What was the worst advice you have ever received? My dad has hounded me constantly to get a new car. Cars are kind of a big deal for him, not in the sense that he buys fancy ones, but he always wants a new car. So every couple of years, he trades in his car and gets a new one. I got my RAV4 in 2014, brand new. Runs like a dream, barely has any miles on it, and has served me very well. It's got a few door dings on it, but that's about the extent of any damage. According to my dad, my car is getting so old that I won't be able to trade it in for a decent amount. Not to mention that it doesn't have any of the safety features, like lane change assist or automatic cruise control adjustment. I've also never been in an accident, and don't do stupid things like drive in really bad weather. I've patiently explained to him how money works. I have a paid-off car right now. I don't owe any sort of money or interest. Zero. Nothing to pay off. My RAV4 gets me from point A to point B, plus has the interior capacity I need it for. By getting a new car, my new car would do the exact same thing, but I now have to pay like $500 a month. So I ask him, why do I need to pay $500 for 5 years if what I have is sufficient? Then he goes back to the trade-in value and you'd only have to pay like $200 a month because you'd be getting a better deal on your current car. Ah, I say, you're ignoring the fact that I still have to pay money when I don't need to. My father was a paramedic for 30 years, and he has some stories. One that sticks out to me was a Thanksgiving story, which apparently generated numerous calls every year. In one, an older, immigrant couple had decided that they were going to deep fry the turkey in a pot of boiling oil for their first Thanksgiving. The wife and husband attempted to lift the turkey into the pot, lost their grip and splashed burning oil all over themselves. When my father turned up for the call, they were covered in second and third degree burns. As he set about treating them, however, he saw that they had covered themselves in a yellow, runny fluid. Confused, he wiped some off and realized that they had attempted to put mustard on their burns. So, either they misremembered the old wife's tale to put butter on burns, or they thought, mustard's yellow too, close enough. I live in a rural area that up until just a couple of years ago, had one hardline internet connection into it, with no redundancy. More than once, the line was severed by a utility company when they dug to access their lines that ran parallel to the internet line. When there were natural disasters, earthquake, landslide, fire, commerce in the entire area came to a screeching halt. This happened on a fairly regular basis. My boss, the head of the organization, a proudly self-described tech Luddite, had been convinced by a pair of well-spoken tech bro entrepreneurs in the nearest urban area, 300 miles away, that it would be a good idea to go with thin terminals, with all of our files stored on their servers, also located in the city, at the other end of the internet line that was frequently out of commission. He overrode every reasonable argument over why this wasn't a great idea and then was enraged when the inevitable occurred within weeks of implementing the new system. He couldn't understand why I couldn't edit documents or access the database that served as the foundation of our work. 4 days. It ended up costing just as much to reverse his decision and bring the data back closer to home. This fiasco was one of the incidents that led to his ultimate dismissal by the board of directors. They told me if I left the rehab I was attending, I'd fail. Joke's on them, because I left there and went directly to an evidence-based, secular program and have been sober for years. Edit, because so many people have asked, I'm going to copy my reply from below that includes a link to Smart Recovery, whose meetings I highly recommend. Honestly, the truth is that unless you have excellent private insurance and access to resources, this type of treatment is hard to come by. Unfortunately, most addicts don't fall into that category. I was lucky. Medicaid and free programs are almost exclusively 12-step based because they're so cheap. For example, while I received therapy from individuals licensed with at least a master's degree, 12-step therapy is led by volunteers or folks paid barely minimum wage that can't get many other jobs due to their arrest records when they were addicts. Not to say they're bad people, just that they aren't qualified. The problem with 12-step, from my perspective, is that it isn't based on any scientific research. It's based on the religious ramblings of an alcoholic that was treated with psychedelics, which is, coincidentally, a more successful treatment model, at least for opiate addicts. Research costs money and real treatment costs money. A provides an excuse to cut almost all the costs of an effective rehab. What I do recommend is Smart Recovery meetings as a place to start. You tend to find folks that want nothing to do with 12-step. It's entirely evidence-based, and the folks there will be happy to help you find a rehab that uses these methods. Had to learn this one the hard way, personally. I spent 4 years with a group in a temporary position. I was a yes man. Anything they wanted. I got calls sometimes to go blow a day off on work because nobody else wanted to, and I always said yes. I felt like I was positively contributing to the team, helping everyone else. This past April, they made that position permanent, which triggered a national search per company policy, and everyone on my team encouraged me to apply. Every single member asked me if I had applied or when I was going to apply. Those same exact people, as members of the hiring team, didn't even interview me, thus, in effect, terminating my employment. There is no loyalty bank. You never do get to make a withdrawal. It's all deposit. All benefit to the company. They don't care about you. It's not a family. I never received negative feedback on my work. Ever. I did everything they ever asked me to do and more. It did not matter at all. Edit, just to answer some QS coming in, I did apply for the job. Spent hours on a carefully crafted cover letter, etc. Didn't matter. Also, I actually didn't have any expectations about being hired. I knew I would have to compete with everyone else. The thing that is so upsetting is that they didn't even interview me. They didn't even hear me out or let me be in any sort of running or comparison of candidates. They boiled it down to credentials, devaluing work experience with their own company, and told me to fuck off. Hello, fellow sucker. I was drawn in by their promise of a directed study path, for software development. It was a complete and utter waste of time. The core classes had the same 1 or 2 teachers that didn't really care. We were basically given answers to the tests before the tests, so there was no reason to study. I literally didn't turn in assignments for at least a couple of classes and still got A's. One of my most memorable moments was when a teacher was going through a slide presentation with the overhead projector turned off and nobody told him. That was how valuable his teaching was. I couldn't find a job with just an associate's degree, and the software development path didn't have enough students to launch the bachelor degree courses. So I spent more money taking a project management courses until the software development bachelor courses started. I graduated over 10 years ago and still have $12,000 of loans left. Fortunately for me, I was self-motivated enough to study and progress on my own, so I am doing well now, making over 6 figures and in fairly high demand. I know plenty of others who would not have done nearly so well. Edit. One of the worst things is that ITT Tech was not accredited, so none of your credits would transfer. It also meant that most loan consolidation services wouldn't accept your loans from them, even if it was handled by Sallie Mae. I could only find one company that would, and they were later sold to Sallie Mae and got fucked up. This is advice applicable only to people who haven't developed the self-control to budget. This is the Dave Ramsey envelope technique, and it has truly saved some people from financial ruin through their own mindless spending habits. However, for people who don't struggle with basic budgeting, the advice has deep and obvious flaws, which is why Dave Ramsey is generally only helpful for people who are bad with money. Other people, who don't spend every penny the second it hits their bank account, can actually build a credit score, dabble in gathering credit card points, and still accumulate wealth. Many of those people are drawn instead to the FIRE movement. It's like that financial advisor only read Chapter 1 of Financial Advising Techniques and hasn't gotten to any of the advanced topics. Instead of preaching Chapter 1 to everyone, he should be gauging the financial literacy and budgeting abilities of his clients and advising different strategies for different people. Dave Ramsey only gets recommended to the most financially illiterate. It's so frustrating to me that someone like that gets to call themselves a financial advisor. When I was addicted to heavy substance and looking for help, I heard a few comment that really pissed me off. Why don't you just stop? Didn't think of that. This mix of vitamin, crystal, and pure water will detox you with no WD. Great way to kill someone. If you are having trouble sleeping, just take melatonin, it will have the same effect. Yeah, sure. Suboxone is really not necessary, you only need strong willpower. That one almost killed me. Tried to go cold turkey the first time and it was hell. Anyway, I could list a lot of them. Is someone you know is suffering from substance abuse? Please, do not tell them to just stop, or you are being a hypocrite and making your family sad. It will only make it worse. Listen to them. Ask relevant question about their current usage and how long it has been going on. Try not to judge even if it's really hard, and if they want to quit. Be sure that they can stop without medicine. So many people underestimate withdrawal, but it can kill you. If anyone is currently struggling with substance abuse, I urge you to get help. I thought my life was over, that all my debt, error, pain, and sadness would follow me forever, but it is never too late. Never. You are loved and deserve to be happy. Edit. English is not my native tongue. I apologized for any grammar mistake. I am on the autism spectrum. Neurotypical friends and family would always tell me people aren't machines, you can't expect them to behave a certain way. As a result, people's social reactions to comments and actions would always seem like a complete black box to me. I knew they often weren't rational, but I couldn't predict or explain their behaviors, as I just accepted they were random in ways I would never get. Actually, I learned in my mid-20s that people are incredibly predictable machines. People have identities defined by a handful of fairly common beliefs. They will have a handful of emotional reactions when situations interact with those beliefs. And I can read those emotional reactions by highly correlated body language or patterns of speech. All I needed to do was to learn the common pillars of identity, situations that tend to upset them, and the signs of emotional states. Now I am recognized as a great people leader and communicator at work. If only I had this spelled out to me 10 years earlier. You're good with computers, you should become a computer programmer. When I was a kid, I weirdly wanted to be an architect. Like even at a young age when other kids wanted to be firefighters and astronauts. I just loved cool buildings, and the idea of designing something as big and important as a building just really appealed to me. But as PCs and game consoles and other consumer electronics like that started coming to be, I did seem to have a natural knack for not only using them, but also troubleshooting and repairing them. So everyone pushed me towards something like programming as a career. I've now been a programmer, or other form of IT employee, for a little over 13 years, and I hate it every single day. Being good at something does not equal enjoying something. I would rather be doing something creative like the architecture I originally wanted to get into. Or working with animals as something like a zookeeper, exotic vet, or sanctuary handler. So word of advice, kiddos, if you have something that you're really interested in and passionate about, don't ignore that to do what's easy. You'll be much happier getting training in the thing you love than settling for what comes easy to you. Growing up with dads is not enough. Those dads need to actually be present and active in their kids' lives. Ding ding ding. My parents divorced when I was 5, but my dad was always a presence in my life. While he wasn't an absentee father, his involvement in my childhood post-divorce was mainly through child support and the occasional weekend spent at his place. Outside of that, he was never really around and was hardly active in my life. Now at 35, he still wonders why I never really go out of my way to communicate with him. It's not a malicious or resentful relationship. I'm just used to him not being around outside of his financial/court-ordered obligation as a parent. Same goes for my mom, but that's a different story altogether. I always like to say that relatively speaking, anyone can feed/clothe/house a child, even a complete monster of a parent. However, it's an entirely different thing to nurture, support, and develop a child into a good human being. Couldn't relate more. Had a few mates turn around and say they wish they had a dad growing up, I'd reply me too. They'd say, but Prag, your dad is with your mom. Can't put into words how frustrating it was. One time I thought maybe it was who I am which my dad didn't like. So I decided to trade in my most treasured possession, 2 binders of Pokemon cards I'd slowly but surely collected, for these shitty-ass Top Trump rally car cards, as I saw my dad watch a lot of motorsports. Super excited to think he'd want to check them out with me and teach me about cars, I ran home, and as I got in he was coming down the stairs. Fucking whack them out, and I'm like, here, check these out. He didn't even stop, just glided by, gave me a "that's nice," and proceeded to grab a beer and read the newspaper. That fucked me up. Many times I wondered if he hated me, maybe was embarrassed by me, maybe resented me, or maybe reality just hit him that parenting is really hard and switched off, but yeah, I don't know. That was basically the extent of our relationship growing up though, and now my mum wonders why me and my brother don't try hard to be in their lives. I resent even more the fact that he's a great granddad. Brilliant with mine and my brother's kids.